Hey y'all, welcome to Light and Heavy. We are doing something a little different, as you can tell, based on this setting. I have my good friend Randall. As some of the viewers of this channel have watched previous videos, I'll leave some links in the description of past videos that we have gone on pilgrimage on. But Randall and I, and just for those that don't know, we've known each other for years, close friends, and also a lover of pilgrimages and travel. And
Yep.
I definitely rely on him and for any tips and tricks. And he a month ago had the awesome privilege of going to Rome for the Jubilee year, and so I wanted to kind of pick his brain a little bit about some of the things that he did to prepare. And in case if you that are watching this are planning to go to Rome this year for the Holy Year, the Jubilee year, excuse me. But also he had the awesome providential moment of being there upon the death of Pope Francis. So I wanted to share a little bit about that. So, anyways, how are you doing, Rand?
I'm doing pretty well. Things have been kind of chaotic since I returned back from Rome, just in my personal and work lives. But yeah, no, just happy to be here. I'm glad we're able to talk.
I
I know
know.
we've attempted this
Oh
this
gosh.
call and video a few times now, but it's all right.
We're here, praise God, and things
Yeah.
are, working as of right now. So, um, but yeah, so okay, let's start kind of quickly from the beginning, and then we'll jump right into it. So, you were planning to go to Rome, obviously for the Jubilee year, and but also to go witness a canonization.
Yeah. So, a relatively new saint that I heard about probably several years ago. I think during the pandemic is Blessed Carlo Acutis. He's like the first millennial, like born in the early 1990s. He died in the early 2000s from leukemia. He was only 15. And over the years, since I heard about him, like maybe 5 years ago, I just started learning more and more about him. I bought some books. It's probably somewhere on my shelf back here. Um, yeah, and the more I read about him, the more I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy's really cool, really awesome. He's a nerd, like he's a video gamer that really resonates with me. He has a very big devotion to the Eucharist. And so all these things, like I think I probably decided, I don't know, like whenever he became blessed, that oh my gosh, like whenever he gets into that next step, like I want to make sure I'm going to be at that canonization. And so lo and behold, the Vatican announced last November that Blessed Carlo Acutis' canonization would be during this year's Jubilee, and set for at the end of April, to coincide with the Jubilee of teenagers. And so, as soon as the Vatican announced that back in November, I was like, okay, I need to book this like right now. And so, being the avid traveler that I am, I do have a bank of points and miles. So, I was able to use some Hilton points to book hotels and airline miles to book the flights. And so, as like I said, as soon as the Vatican announced the canonization date and weekend, I just booked everything immediately.
And then, so, you did this in November, getting ready. And then, as we all know, Easter comes, and then the next day, Easter Monday, we find out the Holy Father's passed away. And I don't know about
Mm.
you. I know for me, I was very shocked just because we saw him
Yeah.
the day before out
Right.
in St. Peter's Square. And then my
Right.
wife telling me, hey, the Holy Father passed away. So, where did you find out? And, what were your initial thoughts and feelings on that?
When he was first hospitalized, I think back in February, I was kind of wondering about his health, or I started to wonder about his health because, like, I don't know, there was maybe the more pessimistic thinking of me. It was like, well, is he going to be healthy enough to, make it to the canonization
Mm,
or whatnot? And so, I mean, he was in the hospital for a while, and I remember like all the prayer requests going out. For his health to come back. And it did. He recovered. And then, yeah, you're right. On Easter morning and Easter Day, he was out and about in St. Peter's Square and whatnot. And so it was quite the shock for me as well. Um, when I found out the next morning. I got up pretty early, so I think I like, and I look at my phone when my alarm goes off. So I like found out at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I was just kind of scrolling through social media, and I'm starting to see these stories of like, wait, Pope Francis passed away, and I was like, what? No, that can't be real. Someone I didn't believe these headlines because just like I don't know, I was just kind of in disbelief, and so.
Yeah.
I went to like the Vatican News website and EWTN, and they had just posted that and confirmed that, yeah, he had passed away. And like, even still, I was like, no way. Because we just saw him. We just saw him. And so, yeah, I was pretty shocked. And then,
Yeah.
given that like I had booked everything for the canonization and it was set for like a week after Easter, I was like, well, what about that? Like, what's going to happen with that? I didn't really know at the time that morning. Um, and also like Easter Day, I formally registered for the canonization mass because apparently the Vatican now has like a website to register for these events. So finally. But yeah, so I had just registered like the day before. And so these were the questions that were running through my mind. And then like as I just mentioned, I had booked everything with miles and points, and so when you book things with miles and points, it's really there's a lot of flexibility in that. So like I was tempted to cancel this trip because I mean, with the Holy Father now passed away, and like there were still some unanswered questions for me, like regarding if the canonization was going to happen. I felt really tempted to cancel this
Sure.
trip.
Sure.
Yeah, because I knew I'd get all those points back and
Right.
and whatnot. But after talking to some Catholic buddies, and I think I probably consulted with you too.
Yeah, I mean, I
um,
know I sent you a text. I was going, I know you were planning to go. I was just curious if you were still going to try and go.
yeah, and so just after giving it a day of thought and a little bit of discernment, I was like, okay, you know what? This is a unique opportunity, and I know there's a whole like we'll say schedule of events that happen whenever a pope passes away,
Hmm.
and I decided to like still go on the trip and just see what I could see, and at the very least, just pay my respects for Pope Francis.
Yeah, I know my wife and I were very lucky to and fortunate to be able to go to Rome to see Pope Francis be installed as the Pope
Yeah,
at
I
his
forgot about that.
mass
That's awesome.
in 2013. Yeah, yeah, we and because we weren't sure, we missed the white smoke by like a couple of days.
Oh
Because
man.
obviously, like you said, with a formal death, there's 9 days of mourning, and you can map it out of when you want to go if you want to see the smoke. But with Pope Benedict, with his resignation, everyone was going, that hadn't happened in several centuries. So we were like, how soon do we start the conclave? I was like, I don't know. And so
Yeah.
my wife and I scheduled everything and we kind of had to do it very quickly. And so we missed it, unfortunately, the smoke, but we got tickets to go to the mass and then we were there through Easter, which was amazing. So I know for us, we to receive that news, we knew, like you said, we knew his health was in pretty dire straits. I mean, when the doctors were being very, very coy, we'll say,
Yeah.
their language was very careful and very calculated in how they were
Hmm.
describing his conditions, that I
Hmm.
knew that, okay, this is serious. And so when he passed, like you said, I was in shock too. I was also just praying for his soul. And
Hmm.
yeah, I know going to the canonization was the primary, but also I would say 1A, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the 1A would also to be there for the Jubilee year. And so for those that are watching that may not know or may have heard this, basically in the Catholic faith, every 25 years, we traditionally hold a Jubilee year that the main basilicas in the Holy Land, or the Holy Land in Rome, It's all across the world, actually, but the main four major basilicas in Rome will open up their doors, their main middle doors, and you can receive a plenary indulgence by entering into those basilicas through the Jubilee doors, and also doing all the prescribed things for an indulgence, which we'll talk about at a later time. So, but fast forwarding now, okay, so you decided, okay, I'm gonna go just to do this. Okay, so you find out Pope Francis passes away on Monday. You decide, when did you leave? Because if I remember right, you left. It was only a couple of days after that.
Yeah. So I had booked my flight for that Wednesday. So Monday, Pope Francis passes away early in the morning. Um, then I kind of took the day to just kind of decide what I was going to do. Ultimately, I decided to end up going, so I kept everything the same. I didn't really changing my plans or anything. But the flight was supposed to leave Wednesday. It was kind of funny because like I think later that Monday or early Tuesday, I got the email from the Vatican saying, "Oh yeah, canonization is canceled." Makes sense.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was just at that point I was just trying to pay attention to the news about because I know that they'll put Pope Francis lying in state at St. Peter's Basilica, so the timing of that. And I was just trying to figure out when that was going to happen, which I think it was actually Wednesday was the first day, I think, that
Yeah.
they put him in his coffin and lying in state at the main altar at St. Peter's Basilica. So um, the flights from Texas to Rome are in the afternoon. So I think I just yeah, I think I went to work that day in the morning and then stopped early, like stopped a little bit before lunchtime and then headed to the airport and then just kind of hung around, then got on that 10-hour flight.
Oof. So, you and I both have done the cross country, cross world, trans world flights. And I know, fun fact, you have been on the longest like nonstop flight in the entire world, right?
Yeah, that's from JFK, New York to Singapore with Singapore Airlines, and that's 18 hours long.
Golly. So, for someone that's traveled that long or that far, let's say someone's watching and they're planning to do, something that's more than 8 hours, that, like you said,
Mhm.
9, 10+ hour flights. What tips can you give them? What has been beneficial for you when you're traveling that long, especially on an airplane and going through the airports?
Yeah, I think I don't do a good job of it, but I think trying to get your body like start eating and maybe even drinking like on the schedule of the destination, that should help with
Mm,
jet lag a little bit. Um, and dress in layers because I don't know. I feel like aircraft can be a mix of hot and cold, especially when I don't know if it's summertime. Yeah, if you're in
hmm
the extreme seasons like winter and summer, like I don't know, just
And just altitude, like when
and
you're when
altitude.
you're yeah, like when you're boarding, it could be hot in the cabin, but then once you're 35,000 feet up, I mean, I know my legs, my feet get so cold on those
Yeah,
long
yeah.
flights. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's a great.
So yeah, bringing, just layers of clothes to change to whatever makes you feel more comfortable. That helps. I did ride a coach class, going to Rome. I mean, that was intentional. I wasn't going to go book, business class for a like pilgrimage, although that would have been nice, but not this one. So, so yeah, yeah, I just made sure to choose an aisle seat because I don't mind being bothered by people sitting in the middle if they need to use the restroom, but I prefer not to bother other people, so I like getting my aisle seat. So
I
so
think
that
that's something that, like, as you get older, you move closer and then eventually become
yeah,
an aisle person. Like, I remember when,
right.
I'm sure, like you, when you're a kid, you want to be the window because you want to see
Right.
everything. But then as you get older, you're going, no, I like to
Yeah, yeah.
have at least a guaranteed, the aisle way, not have somebody
Yeah,
on
yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. Window wouldn't be so bad if I could actually fall asleep in coach.
hmm
I think the lady who was sitting at the window, Yeah, I think she only got up like maybe once, maybe
Wow.
twice. And that was
Wow.
like the beginning of the flight and the end of the flight. So in the middle of it, like she was just asleep at the window. Luckily, I got lucky. So there was like no one in the seat between us. So there was room to spread out a little bit. So that was really
Nice.
nice. But what else? Yeah, just I don't know, bring like I mean, usually for long flights like that, a pillow and a blanket is provided, but I mean, if you prefer your own version of those things, that helps. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
noise canceling headphones, definitely a must. Especially to kind of block out some of the I don't know, other passenger sounds, noises from the galley or the lavatories, or even just the engine noise. Like a
Mm-hmm.
good set of noise canceling headphones helps with that. So,
My
especially if you're like more susceptible to like noises whenever you're trying to fall asleep.
Yeah, no, it's true. And yeah, between everything noise wise that can happen and traditionally does on such long flights. But
Yeah.
I know I have a former boss. He would travel a lot, and his adage was his rule of thumb was I I do the exact same thing when I go travel is the same as I would when if I have to go to the hospital, meaning I try to bring my creature comforts. So to your
Mm,
point, like you said, yes, they will provide you a pillow and a blanket, but it's not going to be anything comfortable really, or it could be itchy, or again, you
yeah.
are relying on their blanket and their pillow. Where if you bring your own, you're going to be able, what you're going to get. Bring your own food. Like don't rely on, oh well, they're going to provide me a meal on the airplane. Well, you and I both know sometimes those
Yeah.
airplane meals are,
Yeah.
sometimes they're amazing. I've had some amazing meals on flights, even in
Mhm.
coach. It can
Yep.
be really tasty, but other times I don't. So don't just go, oh well, they provide it. Well, to a point, right? So
Yeah.
the same like if you go to a hospital, if you can bring, your own music, headphones, like you said, food, anything like that to pass the time, a good book, all that good stuff, right? So,
Right. Right.
okay, so we get to Rome, and I don't know about you. Every time I've gone to Rome, I'm so excited to get to Rome that I don't sleep really well on the plane, and so I am so jet lagged that first day when
Yeah.
I get there. But the adrenaline's pumping. I'm so excited that I'm just like, I'll push through. I'll get through that. What about you? Like what? So you land, and where did you go? What did you do? Were you able to get to the hotel? Did you go to St. Peter's? What did you do?
Yeah, so I think I was pretty excited too, but also like I didn't have any plan. Like I didn't have any like itinerary to follow. I was just going to go, and I mean I knew that St. Peter's Basilica was, hosting the viewing and the of Pope Francis. And like that was my only goal, really, to try and do that maybe Thursday. Leaving on Wednesday afternoon, the flight arrived at like 8 a.m. On Thursday morning. And so yeah, I was pretty like tired because I didn't really sleep a whole lot on the flight. And so when I landed, I just kind of like dazedly went through customs and
Uh-huh.
got out of the airport. It's figuring out the train was kind of it took longer than I wanted. And then I think I didn't so in at Rome Airport, there's I think two trains you can take. There's like the slower one that goes to like every stop, and then the faster one that goes to like the Rome Termini station, and like from there you can get to the rest of Europe because that's like the fast train. I ended up on the slow train accidentally or unintentionally, but that's just what Google Maps showed me, which was fine. Uh, and it was cool because like I think it kind of the track went through different parts of Rome that I hadn't seen before, so that was neat. But my first order of business was yeah, get through the airport, get through the train, and get to the station closest to my hotel because my intent was to drop off my backpack. I only had a backpack, but I also brought like a little a crossover body bag to use as a day bag. So my goal was just to drop off my big backpack off with the hotel and let them hold it until it was time for check-in, because obviously at 9 in the morning, no hotels are checking in people. So,
Right. No.
and I know most hotels tend to, usually they're cool with holding a bag. And so I did all that, and as soon as I was out and about, I went to a coffee shop like a few blocks away and just made sure I ordered an espresso. And then I had a pastry with it. I forget what it's called, but I think it's pretty relatively famous in Rome. But it's like a brioche bun with like a cream filling. It's really good.
Mm.
So I had like an espresso and that. But the funny thing was when it was time to pay, I had like a different server than the one who served me, or who I ordered from, and so I think we had like miss. I was trying to tell her what I had ordered because she didn't see me order what I ordered. So I was
Gotcha.
trying to tell her what I ordered, but she interpreted it as, oh, he wants another espresso and another pastry. So I ended up with another round of espresso and that pastry, and I wasn't even mad. I was like, I honestly needed the caffeine anyway, and just needed the food, I guess.
Uh-huh.
But during that time, since I actually sat there for a while, I was writing down prayer intentions that people had submitted to me into my little blue book. And I think probably from previous videos with you, I explained like whenever I go on pilgrimage, I usually write them down in my little blue book. So I have like a tangible thing to reference whenever I pray for these intentions. I'd rather look out of the book than like at my phone in a holy place. So
Yeah, there's
yeah.
something about the low tech, if you will, and obviously, like you said, the setting and the context, it
Hmm.
looks a lot more presentable in a way.
Yep.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the cafe, it reminded me of something other, just as a side note for anyone that travels into Europe, especially into Italy and Rome, is just be prepared if you're an American, be prepared. It's an experience when you eat, even at a cafe, at a restaurant, anything. So it's not they're not trying to get you in and out as quickly as possible. You're gonna be there for a while, which means
Hmm.
also when you order, it's not gonna come out in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I mean, sometimes it can take a while. So just realize, take your time, slow down, and like Randall said too, it real like take advantage of that low quiet time to write in your journal, to pray, to do whatever you need to do because it's built in there. And the other thing too is a lot of things are open much later than traditional things,
Hmm.
but also that means things don't start until later. So again, here in
Yep.
America, usually dinners at like 6:30, 7 is kind of normal. Like seven's early. Like that's when dinner service is starting in Rome.
Yeah.
So dinner is usually 8 or 8:30 is kind of the prime time there. So just
Mhm.
FYI, keep that in mind if you're going. Okay,
But they're not
so
they're not like Spain where dinner starts at like 10 p.m. So
this is true. Um, okay, so when were you able to go see Pope Francis's body?
yeah. So after I got my coffee, my espressos and pastries, I decided, since I still had several hours before actual check-in time for my hotel, I decided to just go walk over to the Via Angelico gate, which is like the northern gate into St. Peter's Square. It's also where the Swiss Guard shack is. Um, and I just walked over there since it was like only a few blocks away, and just to see the line. And I saw that a line was formed up like past the gate and into the street some. And I was like, okay, I don't know how long this line will take, but I am too tired to like if I'm going to stand in this line for a few hours, like I am not I am not in the condition to do that. And I think
Hmm.
while I was waiting at the cafe, I was reading online that like the day before, so Wednesday, people had waited during the day like several hours, at least 3, 4, 5 hours. Um, uh, And then I actually read headlines later for Thursday, like the day I arrived, that the lines during the day were like 5 hours long. So I'm glad I didn't get in. So, but I still walked over into St. Peter's. I didn't get in this square proper, but like that main road leading into it.
Hmm.
And just kind of walked around and wandered around and just kind of just I noticed how big the crowd was to the line, and then the other like just other crowds of people, just either tourists or people just other fellow Catholics and pilgrims just kind of wandering around. I did that, and then I got hungry, and so I was like, okay, I checked it out. Maybe I'll get in line either later in the day, or my thought was either get in line like tomorrow, like Friday, after I've like
Sure.
gone and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so the next order of business was like I was hungry, so like for real food. And so I wandered back over to kind of near my hotel, and then I was like, I want Filipino food because, when in Rome, you get Filipino food. I happened chanced upon the Rome location of the Jollibee, which Jollibee is the Philippines' famous like fast food fried chicken.
Okay. I was
Everyone
gonna say, would
seems,
you say it's like the KFC
yeah,
of
I was gonna say
Filipino?
like most people kind of compare it to McDonald's, and I
Yeah.
suppose like in terms of like popularity and cultural, I don't know, icon.
Yeah.
It's more akin to a McDonald's, but like food wise, it's more similar to a KFC. But yeah, I just happened to find the one in Rome, and what was funny is like as I was approaching it, like a bunch of like Filipino nuns had just exited with their to-go boxes and things. I was like, okay, this makes sense. But I actually didn't want to. I did not go to Jollibee that time. I saved it for the end of the trip. But I actually wanted like more home cooked style Filipino food. And so after some Googling, I found a restaurant for that. And so like
Mm.
I went down into the basement of some building and like ordered some Filipino classic foods. So pork adobo and steamed rice, and then that also gave me a chance to like recharge things and like sit down for a while too, since there was a lot of walking to get to that point. So I got the food and then I went to my hotel, chilled in the lobby for like an hour, hour and a half, because I didn't want to walk anymore and I just wanted to get into my room and like rest. Because I think at this point I had reached the point of like I'm just so tired and like my body hurts. And so yep,
Hmm.
I go check in and check into my hotel. I think I probably took a little bit of a nap. And then I woke up and then grabbed some water bottles from a local grocery store, which that's a tip because you know, there's like little grocery stores or convenience stores around Rome, and it's pretty expensive to just buy that straight up from the hotel. So, but it's much cheaper to get like the big bottles of the big liters of water at a grocery store and just use that as your water supply. um, uh, yeah, yeah, while in Rome or while in Europe or Italy or whatever. What else did I do? Um, I noticed that the local parish, I had passed by a church when I was on my way to the hotel and I wanted to come back to it. And actually, I think I tried to visit it after the cafe because I was like almost like right across the street. But when I went over there, there was like a wedding going on and I
Mm.
didn't feel like crashing a wedding this time. And so I circled back. So after taking that nap, um, I decided to go back and saw that they were having daily mass at like, I don't know, 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. And so, yeah, I went to daily mass there. So prayed for those prayer intentions, went to mass in Italian. Like many churches, with Pope Francis's death, they had like a little picture of him kind of near the altar. So that was cool. Um, yeah, it was just like a normal parish church, and it was
Hmm.
still pretty like big and beautiful, but not as ornate as like some other ones, but still really nice. I love that it was like really convenient to my hotel. So after that, then I decided to grab dinner at my hotel, um, at the restaurant there, and then I think it was like a late dinner too. because I think I had gone back up to my room and then went to dinner. And then so at like 10 o'clock or 10:30 at night, I was like, no, it was at 10:30 at night. Like I just finished dinner uh, at the hotel, and I was like, you know, I felt the second wind because Rome is 7 hours ahead of Central Time, of Texas time, and so 10:30 p.m. at night is like 3:30, yeah, 3:30 p.m. Texas time, and so I felt like that second wind because my body's still in Texas time, right? And so I was like, let me go check out that line, and so I get back to the Via Angelico gate at 10:30 at night, and there is a crowd of people, probably like I don't know, 50 yards from the arches of the gate. And so I decided to just get in line and just kind of like full send, full commit. Like I'm in this line. I'm gonna go see Pope Francis while I feel pretty good. I had my rest, I had my food, and yeah, I got in line.
So, I guess two things that I thought about, or to share two tips. One is bring good shoes
Oh
when you
yeah.
go to Rome, because like you said, you're going to be walking a lot. You're going to be standing a lot.
Yeah, I will say there is a tram system and a subway system, but that's only good between like the major different neighborhoods of Rome, but like in and around Vatican City, like there's really none of that. So
I mean, Rome is a very old city and it's tried to progress with the times when it comes to transportation and pedestrian and walkability and accessibilities. But, you can only do so much when you have stones and things and buildings where they go, yeah, this was erected in the third century BC. You're like, oh, okay, this isn't America.
right.
So just be prepared for that. And then the second thing that's awesome about Rome is, as you said, Randall, is there feels like there's a Catholic church on literally every corner, everywhere you turn, everywhere you go.
Hmm.
You can't miss a church. So, if you're looking on your maps or whatever, and you're trying to find a mass or trying to find confession or just to go somewhere, trust me, you will find plenty of
Yeah.
places to visit. So, okay, so now you're in line. You decided to stick it out with the night crew, which is
Yeah.
awesome because my favorite time to visit St. Peter's is at night when it's all lit up like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. It's so
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so now you've committed, you're in line. Just kind of walk us through, like, what were you feeling? What were you thinking? And then obviously when you got up to be able to see his body in St. Peter's.
Yeah. So I got in line and it was moving kind of slowly, steady but slow. And luckily it was nighttime, so it was cool. I would have been way more uncomfortable if it was during the day because it was kind of warm during the day. Um, but yeah, luckily no one was pushy. Everyone was pretty respectful of each other, and nobody was like really talking too loudly or anything. Because I think everyone understood like we're in line to pay respects to
Mm.
Pope Francis. We're going to see his body. So. Yeah, so uh, we just moved slowly. I don't remember how long it took to get to the actual gates or to the metal detectors. That probably took about, I don't know, probably like an hour of waiting in the line. But yeah. But in the arms of St. Peter's Square, there are metal detectors. So if you've never been, like if you're trying to enter the square in any fashion, like you're gonna have to go through these metal detectors. So I just thought it was interesting because they were actually forcing everyone to um, consume or throw away any like water bottles.
Hmm.
So I took a picture. It's kind of wild. Like right next to all um, the metal detectors are all these empty like water bottles and whatnot. I had a reusable one, and so the guard actually made me drink out of it just to prove that it wasn't like explosive liquid or whatever.
Right.
But yeah,
Because I
so
remember they
I
would
mean,
do
it
that
makes
at the
sense.
Holocaust Museum whenever we would go
Mm,
in DC.
yeah.
And if it was opened, they would make you drink it just to
Hmm.
see,
Hmm.
make sure that there's nothing in it. But I mean, if it was sealed, you were fine. But anyways, so yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, pretty standard. It wasn't surprising. It was just
yeah,
funny to see like
that mountain of
so many water bottles like just like not cleaned up on the ground. So,
right.
but yeah, once we were inside, but yeah, you're right. It's also my favorite to see St. Peter's Square at night because just yeah, with it all lit up and everything, it looks pretty cool. Um, uh, it was then things got the crowd got a little bit more rowdy just because I think it's St. Peter's Square and it people were taking more selfies and whatnot because it's like very nice and very cool in there. Um, so it got a little bit louder. One funny thing I noticed was I guess just from various things they already like pre-partitioned St. Peter's Square in preparation for the funeral mass and whatnot, and so they were making us go up like a particular like alleyway to get into the church. But I noticed in one of the sections like it was just nothing but seagulls. Like like the like this entire section that's partitioned off like there's like a bunch of seagulls. And I'm like, they're even here to pay their respects, right? So it was just cool to see that like late at night randomly. Like the sea is far. It's not Rome is inland. So
Hmm.
so it's just funny to see that. But anyway, yeah, so it took another while to get into St. Peter's Square. They had us come up the right side and then make the turn like right at the columns. And so uh yeah, just everyone was still being pretty respectful and whatnot. And you talked about the holy doors, and so they actually made us go through the holy door
Oh, nice. Okay.
for St. Peter's Basilica. But I think they didn't really have signs explaining that, but I'm pretty sure like that was the holy door. Well, it well, um, above the door was actually the plaque that said this was the holy door in 2000 when JP2 like made the Jubilee year and made this the holy door, and then I think in 2015 or whatever, there because that was like a special Jubilee year that Pope Francis had
Right.
made. Yeah, for
Yeah.
the year of mercy or whatever. And so that was like the plaque showed both like in Latin, like Pope John Paul II, Holy Door for whatever year, 2000, I guess it would have been.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And then yeah, Pope Francis's, 2015 year Jubilee. Um, so yeah, that was cool. But yeah, walking into St. Peter's, I guess I guess I've only ever really visited it during the daytime, and so I've never seen. I felt like the lights in there were brighter than normal, but probably because
Mm,
like knowing that like given the circumstances, and it was nighttime outside, but like yeah, visiting it late at night is not common. So
right.
even as a normal tourist. So that
Right.
was unique. But yeah, as I stepped inside the church, that was probably when I started getting a little bit more emotional, knowing that like we're getting closer, to Pope Francis. And the reason why I was getting more emotional is because like I mean, you were with me, but we've seen Pope Francis, like we were in his presence in 2013 in Rio. And I mean, you and your wife were, at his whenever they announced him, right?
Yeah.
And then also again, whenever we went to World Youth Day in 2016. And then I went I saw him a third time whenever I went to Mother Teresa's canonization in 2016. And so like I've been in his presence, I've seen him before, and so I think that more just that like tangible or I should say incarnational experience like, like I've been near him or around him, but
Right.
knowing that like oh gosh, he's gone now, like that I don't know. I was just feeling the emotion of that, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I know we discussed this in a previous recording that didn't get worked out, but um, just to make it here, like we've said, say what you will, good, bad, or anything in between. At the end of the day, he was still the Holy Father. He was still the supreme
Right.
pontiff, the successor
Hmm.
of Saint Peter. And just like with all of our fathers, yeah, our biological fathers, they have their flaws. They're not perfect, but they're still your father. And especially like you said, was a holy father who had spent. We also forget how long he was the Holy Father during. I think I mentioned in a previous video that I record, for much of my, especially my adult life, he was the Holy Father. He was my Holy
Yeah.
Father, and he was yours. So it was that he was there through a lot of it, and like you said, to be in his presence at so many occasions, and to hear his words and his, again, say what you will, like he loved us.
Hmm.
He loved the people. He loved being with the sheep. And I mean that's partially why I think, sadly, in a way, he did die much quicker in that sense, because he didn't rest. Like I'm sure his
Right.
doctors kept telling him to, like, hey, you need to take it easy. He's like, no, I need to be with I need to be with the people. I need to be
Right.
with the sheep. And
Right.
so
Right.
to have that emotion, and so to pay your respects to your father in that regard is something that's extremely special. And I know, for me, I now live in Ohio, as many of you know, and so
Mm.
we had the TV on in the background at my office, and so we could see the thousands of people going through. And like you said, I'm in the Eastern time zone, so we're 5 hours, or no, 6 hours behind. And so it's 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, that means it's 10 p.m. there, and we would still see these lines and lines of people. And we're going, man, are they ever gonna they're gonna close the doors? Then barely not.
Yeah. So that was also part of my motivation to check out the line at 10:30 because I think originally they said it was only going to be open from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But I had read online that they actually kept it open all night, like Wednesday
Mm,
night.
mm.
And I think they briefly shut down at 5 a.m. to just kind of refresh the body, whatever that means, and then just kind of clean things up around St. Peter's Basilica. So I knew like getting in line at like 11 o'clock at night, like I'd be good.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, you're right. Love him or hate him, like he was still our Holy Father. And yeah, I think I kind of had that thought in my mind as I was approaching the coffin in St. Peter's Basilica. And yeah, like the closer and closer I got, the more I was like feeling that emotion. Like I don't know, I tend to get emotional anyway when it relates to the death of people. So, um, but yeah, but there's like tangible memories and tangible encounters that we've experienced, and so that and to like tangibly experience, Pope Francis passing away, like definitely like made for an emotional moment. And so, yeah, a lot of so going through the line in the church was kind of interesting because I mean, St. Peter's Basilica, very beautiful, very huge. I think it's still one of the largest churches in the world. And so it's a weird vibe in that we're like approaching Pope Francis's body, but everyone's still taking pictures like of the church. But they actually made everyone go down the middle aisle. So we didn't. So I think under normal circumstances, you're usually
right.
like walk through the different side chapels, and then you can go up the middle aisle. But no, they made everyone go down the middle aisle. And as we were approaching the coffin, they I saw there were like Italian men in suits trying to direct everyone to not stick around for too long up at the coffin just to kind of keep the line moving.
Sure.
And so, yeah, and when it became my turn, yep, I just stood right there by I guess the fence. I don't even think, yeah,
Barricade. Yeah.
barricade. I don't think it was even the ropes, but yeah, just said a quick prayer for the repose of Pope Francis's soul and a prayer of thanksgiving, and then like walked over to the side. Um, I did notice that there was like a section, a seated section, kind of closer to the coffin on the sides, and there were some people praying there, but I'm not really sure how they got in or who they are that they had that privilege. But other than that, like the
How
suited Italian
close
men.
were you able to get though? Like once you got there to say a prayer, like were you
Yeah,
approximately how far?
probably like 6 feet or
Okay.
so. So maybe something 10 feet around, plus or minus. So
Still pretty close
relatively
though.
close.
Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, relatively close. And then like I said, only had like, yeah, I don't know, maybe max 30 seconds before they kind of push you along. So which is fine. But said my quick prayers and then moved along.
Yeah.
Luckily, so directly behind the main altar and the coffin is, the Holy Spirit or the chapel of the chair of Saint Peter,
Hmm.
and where the dove stained glass window. But so if you're facing that and then like towards the left, there's another chapel there, and I noticed a lot when I circled around the back of the main altar. I noticed a bunch of people praying there, and because there's a tabernacle there and with the red candle lit. So I was like, okay, let me stop and pray some more here since that seemed appropriate.
Right.
Yeah. And so yeah, so just got to pray with other people who were praying there too. So that was really nice.
Nice.
Um, prayed for my prayed for the prayer intentions I had with me as well. And then yeah, so after staying there for probably like 10 minutes, then I walked out
Yeah.
slowly.
Sure.
But yeah.
Sure. Awesome. So obviously, um, after that night, you still had a few days to be there. And instead of seeing the canonization of Blessed Carlo, you were able to attend the actual funeral mass instead.
Yeah.
And that's, again, how many people get to say they went to a
Right.
funeral mass of a Holy Father? I mean,
Right.
that's pretty
That was
special.
that was part of my motivation to still go. I'm like, what if like my time there it does line up? Because I think at the beginning of the week we didn't really know when the funeral mass was going to be scheduled just yet. I think they didn't announce the timing of that until like maybe Wednesday. Like I think I was on the plane when they did it. So but let me back up. So it took me 2.5 hours from starting in that line to get to the body of
Okay.
Pope Francis. So it was not as bad as like a 5 hour a 5 hour line during the day. So it was like 2.5 hours um, at night. And when after I left St. Peter's Square and then kind of got back to the street where I first got in line, like there was no one there. That must have been at like like 1:30 in the morning. So I was like, man, if I had gotten in line at 1:30 in the morning, the wait would have been so much less. But but it's all right. No. Um, but yeah, so funeral mass. So I didn't know. I think when I landed in Rome is when I think I found out that it was going to be Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And so when I finished paying my respects, like at St. Peter's Basilica, I still had Friday like to figure out what to do before the funeral mass. And so after I returned from paying my respects, I just went back to bed. Um, and got up the next morning, Friday morning, and I I I think I spent most of my breakfast like trying to figure out like what to do. And I think I ultimately concluded that, like I should probably I want to go to St. Mary Major, like the Basilica of St. Mary Major, because I know that's where Pope Francis will be ultimately buried.
Hmm.
And I know that's he has a quite the devotion to that image of our Blessed Mother that in that chapel in that church. And so my goal was like, or for Friday, I was like, let me like go over there to St. Mary Major. And then after breakfast, I was like, let me walk over there. So basically from like the tour entrance, oh, my hotel was it was near the tour entrance of the Vatican Museums, just a few blocks away. And so basically from that point, walking over to St. Mary Major, which I think was about 2 miles. So, but 2 miles of Roman hills and streets and sidewalks.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, it took me a while to get there. But yeah, so I think the path had me take some sort of more eastwardly southern, like more east south like routing. I ended up kind of behind the Spanish Steps. I did pass by the Piazza del, well, the Plaza of the Roman people.
Hmm.
I think Friday was actually a national holiday in Italy, and so a lot of the plazas and things had different events.
Mm.
And like there was just a bunch of people out because of all the festivities for whatever national holiday it was that Friday. Um, so yeah, I walked like behind the Spanish Steps by, and then I also walked by the Plaza of the Roman people. And then yeah, and then I eventually made it down to St. Mary Major. Um, so that had also a line as I figured out when I got there. Because as we mentioned earlier, this is the year Jubilee, and the four major basilicas in Rome are designated like pilgrimage locations for the holy doors and whatnot. And so, and then not on top of that, St. Mary Major is, uh, the cardinals were doing stuff there for Pope Francis and whatnot, and it's like pretty heavy with tourists and pilgrims just because it's that particular church. So, so yeah, I ended up in a 45-minute line trying to get into the church,
Not as
and as
bad.
I found. And as I found out, there's actually separate lines because of the year of Jubilee. So there's like a line if you didn't make a reservation, a line if you did make a reservation, and then
Mm.
another line if you're with a group. And I
Okay.
think you can make those reservations if you download the Jubilee app. Um,
Okay. That's good to know.
yeah, yeah. Which I didn't really know at the time. So I did all that later, but I think for future reference, if I return to Rome within this year of Jubilee, like I would be sure to like make reservations. That way I can hop in the shorter line. But most everyone did not make reservations. But a lot of the groups did because again, this is the year of Jubilee and it was that weekend was the um, Jubilee of teenagers. So there's like a lot of youth
Hmm.
groups that are in town.
I remember seeing
So
your Instagram reels of just the large number of people around, so that makes sense if there's a national holiday, but then also all the teenagers for Blessed Carlos, so and just the weekend for the
yeah,
celebration of teenagers.
so
Yeah.
lots of people.
Hmm.
Um, I forget how long it took me. I think it was probably like an hour, hour and a half. And I mean, I was kind of stopping every so often also, but for me to walk from the Vatican basically to St. Mary Major and in 45 minutes to get into the church. But once I was inside, I beelined kind of like pushing through people taking pictures um to the chapel where the Our Lady of the Health of the People of Rome, that image that Pope Francis has a lot of devotion for. That's the same image he visits before and after every apostolic trip. uh, and so um and he also visited it like when he left the hospital or when he got discharged from the hospital. So anyway, I beeline towards that chapel. It's like in the back left corner. And I get in and, I kneel down. I find a pew. I kneel down to pray. I pray for the prayer intentions. And then a bunch of excited nuns just started saying things in Spanish. And then worship music started. And then like they rang the bells. Like mass started. And then I found myself accidentally attending a daily mass, like in this chapel with a pilgrimage group from some Spanish speaking country because um, yeah, the large group of nuns that were there were speaking Spanish and Father was saying mass in Spanish. So yeah, I mean, part of me was like kind of surprised, but also not surprised, but then also like, oh, cool, like I mean, I wanted to go to daily mass at some point during the day, but it just sort of like it all just lined up nicely. And they
Hmm.
like closed the chapel. Like they were preventing people from going in while mass was going on. And so like I was stuck there anyway. So that was really cool. So got to go to daily mass in that chapel, pray for the intentions that I had, and then yeah. So that was just I just love those like these moments, these I don't know, moments of consolation or like these spiritual happenstances that like where my only reaction is like, well played, God, well
Yep.
played.
Yep, I that's one of the best things about pilgrimages and yeah, don't be surprised if you especially if you go by yourself or if you're not with a group when you visit these churches that certain chapels, certain places may be off limits for a time because there's a mass going on. There's some special occasion going on. Just
Mhm.
be patient. But then sometimes you get very fortunate and lucky, like Randall here, and you get kind of adopted into that group for the time being and get to celebrate Mass. I know when my family and I went to Detroit a couple of weeks ago, and we went to go visit the cathedral, and we ended up getting a private tour by the security guard guy. And he was
Nice.
explaining everything to us and telling us the history of the cathedral and the church and all the stuff. And we didn't plan it. We didn't call ahead. We just, hey, wherever the Holy Spirit wills and leads me, and that's what happens. And that's the beauty of a pilgrimage is like you said, you didn't go in with an itinerary. You just went by the Holy Spirit and where He wills you, where He prompted you to go. So He wanted
Yeah.
you there at the right place at the right time for Mass.
Yeah. And I'm so surprised it lined up because like it was a long walk and then like I still stopped at various places to take pictures and whatnot. Like so
Yeah.
for everything to line up just right, even with waiting in line and all that, for me to be able to attend daily mass with
Mm.
this random group at in that chapel at that time. Yeah, no, like it's like only the Holy Spirit can like you know, lead me line it up all like that. So
Nice.
Um, but anyway, after daily mass, I know that the relic of the manger, like from Bethlehem, is in a small chapel on like the bottom level of St. Mary Major. So I went to go uh visit that. I didn't like actually get in another slightly long line to actually go down into the chapel and kneel at that relic, but you can still see it from above. And so from there I prayed for the intentions that I carried with me and just kind of wandered around. And then after that I kind of wandered around St. Mary Major. I saw the the niche I don't know the spot basically where they're going to put Pope Francis
Okay.
after the funeral. They had it like there was like a bunch of plywood like around where the tomb would be. But so I didn't really see what it would look like. No one did. They didn't. I don't think they revealed it until like Friday or later that
Mm.
day, Friday. So or early Saturday. But so yeah, saw that. Just did my thing, and then I left St. Mary Major, took some pictures on my way out. I think I did like a reel from in front to just kind of explain all that I'd experienced there. And I walked, and then I started walking back towards the Vatican. And then I think I probably got like 1 mile in and realized that, oh my gosh, um, I have a friend from my parish that recommended this other basilica to go visit. And it slipped my mind that it was actually back over like a few blocks over by St. Mary Major. So I double backed and like headed back towards the basilica and like went to go visit that church. And I'm glad I did because I feel even though I feel like I did visit the this same recommended church back in 2016, I don't recall like the inside of it, but it's the Basilica of Saint Praxedes. It's just a few blocks away from Saint Mary Major. Very low key on the outside, and I think it's run by Benedictines, but low key, it looks I don't know like almost like nothing on the outside. But when you walk inside, oh my gosh, there's the mosaics on the ceiling are like quite magnificent. And what
Mm,
was nice is I guess it's not, I don't know, it's not like a tourist, not a touristy church. And, I feel like to go seek it out, you'd have to be pretty intentional about it. Even though it is just a few blocks away from St. Mary Major. And so, yeah, like I think it was just me and like maybe two youth groups that weren't very big. And then maybe a few other like, um, other visitors or tourists or pilgrims. And so the church was like relatively empty, like when I went inside. So it was really cool to enjoy like the peace and quiet of that versus like the
mm,
chaos that was at
yeah,
St. Mary Major.
yeah.
And so I was like walking inside St. Mercedes, and I noticed like a side chapel entrance thing, and I just out of curiosity I like went in there. But there was like a few couples in there, just kind of like talking about stuff, and then I was like, um, I don't know. And then they were like kind of waiting in line to see something like down in the corner. And I just kind of waited for them to be done with that. And uh, from where I was standing, like maybe like 5 feet, no, less than 10 feet away, like it just looked like a pillar. Like, I don't know, like a, like a pillar. And I was like, I don't know what that is. But like when it got to be my turn and I saw the little sign and in English it said this or basically this is the pillar that Jesus was scourged on. I was like, oh
Mm,
wow,
mm,
that's why these people were visiting. And then wow, like this random church, that's not random, but like this church has this
right,
relic, you know?
right. Yeah, yeah. That's something that and you mentioned about the crib, the crush for the nativity, and then the pillar for the scourge. I mean, that's one of the amazing things with Rome is wherever you go, or feels like it, anyways. Um, let alone the saints that are buried at these churches, the amazing artifacts that have been brought to Rome from the Holy Land and from all over the world. Thank God for Saint Helena, for Constantine, and all those that had risked life and limb to bring these and to preserve them for us 2,000 years later to be able to see it in person, to be able to, for you to be able to do that. And so I'm sure I can only imagine for you now when you're praying the sorrowful mystery, the scourging at the pillar,
Yeah.
it takes on a whole new reality for you, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
because it's like I'm looking at it. I'm looking at this mystery.
Mm,
Literally.
wow.
Yeah. And yeah, to that point of like, yeah, Rome has like a lot of relics from the Holy Land and from the Jesus's Passion, and I feel like no one really talks about that because I think even when we did the tours around Rome for World Youth Day 2016
Hmm.
during our, several days stay there in Rome. Like, I don't think any of our tour guides mentioned that. And so I didn't really find out about them until when I went back for Mother Teresa's canonization and my travel companion and parish friend like showed me these various churches with the different relics. So I think there's one church just down the street from the uh the Holy Steps or near St. John Lateran, like that has like a lot, like the thorns,
Hmm.
the uh the whip, like just a lot of stuff from the Passion. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
it's right next to the holy steps because I remember my wife and I went there, and the tradition of you can walk on your knees on the holy steps that Christ walked up in the Holy Land on Good Friday for Pontius Pilate, and then yeah, it's like right next to it is another church chapel that it's kind of a semi half circle, and like you said, it's just everything that you can think of when you describe and talk about the passion is right there.
yeah,
Everything. It's that just mind blowing that
yeah,
it's you're staring at these relics of Christ. It's amazing.
yeah. But anyway, so yeah, so I finish up at St. Mercedes and I head back, or I start walking again towards the Vatican, or my hotel basically. I might get the order wrong, but I did stop at a few places, and I know I stopped by the Trevi. I like ate dinner by the Trevi Fountain. I found some sort of touristy restaurant that had some good reviews. And I was there for a little while because service takes a long time.
Hmm.
Um, but it was cool to like eat my carbonara and drink my beer and, watch all these. It was like, I don't know, a few blocks away from the Trevi Fountain. So it was like a lot of foot traffic. So it was the people watching was like quite great. Um, and then I went, then I like walked through the Trevi Fountain Plaza, and that was like not my favorite because you're shoulder to shoulder. It's so busy with people. I was like, making sure my hands are in my pockets just to make sure I didn't get
Hmm.
pickpocketed by anybody.
Hmm.
But like, it was just not great. I don't see how people were like walking their dogs like through this. But yeah, there were like a ton of people at the Trevi Fountain. I know all the TikTokers and all the influencers and all the Rome travel tip people will always say like, go early in the morning or go in the evening. And I can confirm, yes, do that because like during the day, not great.
Because and a lot of people don't, unless if you've been there, that the Trevi Fountain is it's not in an open area. It's very
Right.
much it's in the middle of the city, and you feel like you're going down these alleyways, and there's a probably one, two, three, four, probably about at least five or six intersections that run into it, and
Yeah.
you're just
And they're narrow.
they're very narrow, and when you go around it's just one of those things where you'll be walking along, you turn the corner, and boom, there it is. You're going, oh my gosh! And then, like you said, you're shuffling through that because it's so narrow and so congested all the time because everybody wants to see it,
Right.
and like you said, it's notorious that area, and you got to keep your wits about you there because it's notorious for pickpocketing and theft. So thankfully, again, if you know what you're doing, you keep your eyes open and just check in your surroundings, you'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But if you're not paying attention or you just leave your backpack at kind of willy-nilly, it's a high probability that something nefarious could take place. So we'll just say,
Right.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. And then, like I said, I forget the order, but I feel like after the Trevi Fountain, I headed towards the Pantheon. And I did make it to the plaza where the Pantheon is, but I didn't get in line to go to the Pantheon because the Pantheon's also another like like high tourist location and church. Yes, Pantheon, it was like a pagan temple in ancient Roman days, but now it's like a Catholic church. Like they have mass there.
Hmm.
Really cool on the inside, but I that was, I don't know. I didn't want to go inside this time, so just the line looked too long. It's like I don't want to do any more lines. So, um, but I did want to go visit like one of my favorite churches in Rome, and that's just like a block or two away from the Pantheon, and that's Santa Maria sopra Minerva, or Saint Mary over Minerva. So I think my understanding is that at that location there used to be a temple dedicated to Minerva, which is a Roman goddess.
Hmm.
And then this Catholic church was built on top of that church, the old temple. And so so when you're on the outside of the church, it's just a very plain white facade, looks almost like nothing. Um, and then you walk inside and it's quite possibly one of the most like magnificent things you'll ever like you see. It's kind of dark, but there's like a very blue, I think the sea, like, I don't know, there's like a blue's like a dominant color within the church, and everything's very ornate. It's a Dominican church. And so yeah, just magnificent. But one of the reasons why I like it is because in the main altar of Sancta Maria sopra Minerva is the most of the body of Saint Catherine of Siena. I believe her head is actually in Siena, and I think her arm and other of her appendages might be in
Hmm.
other locations in Italy.
Yes.
But for the most part, her most of her body is in the high altar there at that church. And So yeah, I asked for her intercession for the different prayer intentions I was carrying with me. Saint Catherine of Siena also, she's famous for being a mystic, but like she has credit for convincing the Pope to move from France back to Rome because I think he kind of chickened out during the Muslim invasions, whatever time period that was, and so the the papacy moved to somewhere in France for a time.
Avion.
Av Avion, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
And but yeah, she's famous for convincing the Pope to move back to Rome. So
Hmm.
um, quite influential there. And then one of my favorite saint quotes ever is from Saint Catherine of Siena. She's credited with saying, like, if you are who God created you to be, you will set the world on fire. And so in previous, like, I don't know, that's just one of my favorite quotes, and just yeah, I like putting that on things. So so it was cool to be able to visit that church again. So
Yeah. No, it's one of our favorites. I'm obviously very biased and partial since I named one of my children Catherine after St. Catherine of Siena. So yeah, my wife, when we went in 2013, we didn't have any children at that point, and so but we got to go to Siena for a day. We took the train there, and so we got to see her head at in Siena at the main basilica there, and then yeah, going over to Saint Minerva, Our Lady of Minerva, over Minerva. Like you said, it's you go to the Pantheon and it's just tourist 101, and it's a little bit more open. There's a little bit more of an open plaza in front of there, but there's very like tourist traps. You've got the Roman actors, things like that. So just be aware of that
mhm.
because they'll want to take take a picture with us, and they're like, oh, here, pay us now. So
Yeah.
just be careful with that. But yeah, plenty of restaurants and things like that. But like you said, if you're staring at the Pantheon, just hang a left and just go down that road, and you're going to be going for a little ways. Again, you're going out of the beaten track, so you're going to feel like the lines and everything, the crowds are going to be thinning, and you're going, wait, am I going the right way? There's nobody over here. And then it's going to be on the left hand side, and there's what's it called? It's like the Washington Monument. I
Obelisk.
Thank you. I was going to say that, and I was chickened out. The obelisk, there's an obelisk right there in front of the church, and so that's kind of the marker that I always tell people when you go to visit. Just look for that, and then when you go in, you'll just be blown away. So
Yeah.
yeah, love it.
Yeah, so after visiting that, I think I visited another church kind of close by just because it was just on the way, but I forget what saint it was named after. I feel like this during this whole day that happened actually every so often. Just like, oh, there's a church over there. Let me go check it out. And it's just some small parish that's like really ornately decorated, even though like it's not touristy. The people, I mean, some pilgrimage groups might be borrowing it to have their own group mass or
Right,
whatever.
right.
But yeah, so that happened a few times, like on my walk back and on my walk over to St. Mary Major, but I don't remember all their names. Another like milestone, we'll say, on my walk back. That same friend who, from my parish, who recommended that I go visit the Basilica of St. Mercedes, he also recommended this bar called Abbey Pub, I think. Um, Apparently, it's just a bar kind of near, kind of in the Trevi Fountain neighborhood or the Pantheon neighborhood, or in between the two, where a lot of Americans like to go to have a
Okay.
drink.
Yeah.
And so I went, and so I had like a cider. It was a good like R&R moment for me too, because I after all that
Sure.
walking, remember Rome has a lot of hills, so everywhere you walk, it is uphill literally both ways. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, so I just needed some time to rest, and so it was nice to enjoy a drink and do that while on my walk. But then after that, continuing onwards again towards the Vatican, uh, one of the other milestones on my walk was I ended up in I forget the name of the plaza, but it's very long and rectangular, and it has this like really nice fountain in the middle. And so there was, like I said, it was a national holiday in Rome, so there was like a ton of people, a ton of different events, or little activities, and music and whatnot. And so, like, it was a pretty hopping plaza. But I noticed this like big building in the middle. And I was like, let me go check that out because it just seems to stand out like versus all the other buildings that are surrounding the perimeter of the plaza. And yeah, I get closer and turns out, yeah, it's a big Catholic church. I was like, oh, okay, let me go walk inside. I walk inside and I mean, it was a little bit more ornate on the outside, but then the inside, like the dome of it is like just awesome mosaics again. And then I learned from reading signs that were both in English and Italian, like, oh, this is Saint Agnes in Agony, like the Basilica of Saint Agnes in Agony. This is like this church was built on top of where she was martyred.
Mm.
And I was like, oh man, cool. So I prayed for, oh, yeah, I prayed for the intentions, asked for her intercession, and yeah, just kind of hung out in the church. I didn't pay to go down into the crypt, but you can pay some money and like go down to the crypt level of the church. So I'll have to save that for next time. And then I think after that, I made it back to across the Tiber River, but via the Castel Sant'Angelo, like the road leading up to that. So I believe that castle was a prison, if I remember correctly. But it's like really close to the Vatican, so that's how I knew that I was
Yeah,
close. Well, really, when you cross the Tiber River, like you're really close.
right.
But the castle is like an imposing like building. uh, Whenever you approach the Vatican from that way. Yeah, so I get back to St. Peter's basically. I go up the main road. I was in looking at social media, I noticed that the Catholic Traveler, who's a famous American tour guide in Rome, he's been living there for the past 20 years and he's pretty popular on social media for Catholics and non-Catholics, but especially during this time because he's been doing a lot of live coverage of Pope Francis passing away, like what is Rome and the Vatican doing, and he's just been doing a lot of content related to, what's happening in Rome during this time. And so I noticed he had just posted a story like as soon as I entered like the St. Peter's area, like maybe not 5, 10 minutes ago, like he was like at the very front. And so I was like, I wonder if I can meet him. So like I like kind of hoof it down uh to where that's where he made that story and tried to look around for a while. Um and I didn't find him, unfortunately. And then he had posted like another story from like the far left side of the square. Because I think that was that was serving as like a sort of media entrance because he had posted like a story of showing Tom Brokaw um uh
Okay.
like entering into like St. Peter's. And so I
Uh-huh.
was like, so I walked over there too. And then didn't find him there either. And then I took like some sort of long walk around St. Peter's and the Vatican back to my hotel. Um, but during this whole time, as I was following the Catholic Traveler's content, like he did provide like a really good reel about tips for attending the funeral mass. And so I watched that, and then he actually gave like way more tips and bullet points in the text portion of that reel. And so the one I really remember because it's like the one I kind of followed was he recommended to show up to get in line to go to the funeral, which was scheduled for 10 a.m. on Saturday at 4 a.m. And I didn't get back to my hotel from wandering around the Vatican uh, uh, until like, I don't know, like 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. And so I wasn't all enthusiastic about like showing up to get in line at 4 a.m. But I went to bed and I got up early, used up all the coffee in my hotel room, and then got in line at 5 a.m. So,
Better you than me, sir. No, I remember seeing the pictures that you posted of being in the large crowds waiting to get into St. Peter's, and it reminded me of the Easter Mass. So, like I mentioned in
Mm.
2013, my wife and I went. We were at the installation Mass, but then we stayed a couple, like 2 weeks later was Easter. And our boss let us stay through Easter, which was an amazing thing to be able to do. And I remember they told us similar. They said, "Listen, if you want to get in the square and you want to be able to actually have a chair to sit down in, you're gonna have to wake up at dark 30." And so yeah, we woke up super early and we had to stand in line. And you're thinking, I hope I'm in the right line. I don't know. You're just in a sea of people,
Yeah.
and you'll move, maybe a few steps and then you stop. It's very similar a la a World Youth Day sometimes, of
Yeah.
just the crowd, the sea of people. So yeah, I was able to kind of put myself back into that. I was like, oh yeah, I remember those days. It's fun.
Yeah.
So you're up bright and early. You're getting into or close to St. Peter's. Uh, you know, what was the again, I'm guessing, the mood I would assume would be fairly, I was going to say joyful somber. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's accurate or not, or if that's true. What was it like from your vantage point?
Yeah, so I think I left my hotel at like 4:30 a.m. and I got in line. So I couldn't they had closed off the Via Angelico entrance at the time that I passed by it. So they were forcing everyone to basically go almost to the Castel San Angelo, um, and some side street there to get into the square. So basically, you had to take a side street close to the very end of the main road, which I forget what it's called, um, and start in line there. I think because they had closed off most like other entrances into St. Peter's Square for probably security reasons, um, and they were trying to reserve that for like first responders and whatnot. So I think I got in line at about 5 a.m. And yes, I think the vibe was joyful, somber, but also it was 5 a.m. So most people were relatively quiet. Some groups were singing.
Mm.
Also, it was cold. It was cold that morning, uh, and then it also windy. So anytime, like once there were no buildings kind of blocking the wind, like it got pretty cold. And then that line didn't really move, because they didn't open up that first gate into the main road until 6 a.m.
Okay.
Um, so we were stuck there, didn't really move for like a while. And so luckily, just having that many people packed in a small area, uh, kind of helped with like not being too cold. But there were some pushy people, some pushy groups that trying to like kind of
Hmm.
flank everyone by coming up the sides and whatnot. And nobody got testy about it or anything, but it still happened. But then I think yeah, at about 6 a.m. I started hearing cheers from the front of the line because they like the first security check gate opened up, but it still took a while because they basically how like you're on like a 6 lane highway, but then they kind of force everyone into like one lane.
Hmm.
So that's pretty much what happened, except it was like 20 lane highway into like 2 or 3 lanes.
Right.
Yeah, because they were kind of like metering how many people would go into the main road. They didn't want to overwhelm the security checkpoint because they were hand checking
Sure.
bags and whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think I got through that security lane at about, I don't know, 6:45, something like that. And then once I was on the main road, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It felt more free because it wasn't crowded yet. And then we all had to go through the metal detectors like into the square. And so I
Right.
got through that about 7 a.m.
Okay.
And then yeah, everyone's just like excited because we're in the square and whatnot. So I guess long story short, I ended up being pretty much at the frontmost you could be for standing room only. In the so in front of the obelisk there in St. Peter's Square, because like just a few people in front of me were already the seated sections. So, and I was like in the very corner of my particular section,
Gotcha.
which was nice because it was like right by like the major alleyway in the square, and then also a TV was nearby, so I could like see the live footage and whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, so it was tricky. So I got to that part at like 7 a.m., but the mass didn't start till 10. So it was like, what do I do for like 3 hours, right? And in that corner, there was like an Italian youth group, and then a lot of the kids were sitting down and taking up a lot of space, and they were just on their phones and eating snacks and being loud. And then there was like a French group, a French pilgrimage group, like kind of around me, and they were chill and quiet. And then I think there were some Spanish and Italian people like behind me, and some African American um, ladies because they spoke English and whatnot. Like a few people behind me, but yeah, this was like the crowd I was with for the entire time. Um, so yeah, so I guess there were a few challenges in this because well, restroom. So, uh, I I had to find a balance of drinking enough water to not be dehydrated, but not drinking too much water to feel the need to have to go because the
Hmm.
only porter potties available were like at the walls of the Vatican. So like everything I had just stood in line for, like I'd have to almost retrace most of that just to go to a porter potty. And yeah, no.
Yeah,
And
no.
so that was like challenging. So, and then, yeah, I took a few sips of water every so often just to, kind of have some water. But, um, I knew that the going to the restroom situation would not be good because there were a few ladies who like left our little area and went to the restroom. And then when they came back, I think everyone had forgotten who they were and that they
Oh
were
no.
like right, that they were with groups like in our area. And so
Um,
there was a lot of like passionate, I wouldn't say yelling, but we'll say passionate, like, no, you can't pass through here. Because I think everyone assumed that these ladies who had just gone to the restroom, but we had a lot of language barriers because I just outlined for you like
hmm.
how many different types of people were around me. Um, but everyone kind of assumed these ladies were like trying to cut or trying to push
Right.
through to get to the front and whatnot. And so, but in reality, like, no, these ladies were here. They just
They're
had to
right
go to the
there.
restroom, but
Yeah.
they were gone for a while because it takes a while to get there and it takes a while and you're crawling over people, right?
Hmm.
So, yes, there were some passionate moments there. And then the other passionate moments were like people who were just trying to get into the alleyway because they assumed that there was some sort of gate like at the corner that we were at, but like there wasn't, and so people were just trying to push through to get into the alleyway. So I don't know, but
You'd be like, this is not an exit.
yeah, yeah, but in English because I don't speak
Right.
conversational Italian and Spanish, so
Uh-huh.
you would think that like in a Catholic crowd, people would be a little bit more charitable, but I think just from everyone being tired
Oh,
and
yeah.
at this point it's starting to warm up and like
Hmm.
get a little bit hot, like everyone was a little bit more on edge.
Right.
But funny things. So they had like these old guy volunteers in vests kind of helping direct people around. And I just noticed this one old man. He had the job of like having to tell all these habited nuns that kept coming like to stop running. So I love nuns and religious sisters because they usually are the most joyful ones in the crowd, just and they're just very excitable. And so, like I feel like every nun, like every religious sister coming into the square, just had that disposition and behavior. And so a lot of them were like rushing to get to their I think all clergy and religious had their own like sections of the square
Gotcha.
to get to. So everyone was just like excited.
They
And
were
so
like little kids at the pool, and the lifeguard had to be like, "Stop running, no
it
running."
was basically that, minus the pool, and the lifeguard was like 7 years old. But yes. Yeah. What other cool things? So the Vatican Media had a one drone pilot, and so it was just cool to kind of follow the drone around, getting these really cool footage. So I don't know, I think the videos are probably still up on their YouTube, but like
Oh yeah.
really amazing footage of just the crowd as it increased as the St. Peter's Square filled up and whatnot. I also learned from like secular news that that Italian military had like these special guns that could be used against like drones that were not supposed to be there. They look I don't know, they look quite substantial.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I only saw the one drone, and I found the drone pilot because he was kind of standing on top of the square, on top of the arms,
Right.
um, kind of in the same corner where I was. So that was neat. The other challenge with standing for that long was it got warmer. So I think I really started to feel it like maybe like before mass started.
Mm.
And then the other challenge was what else? Let me think for a minute. Uh, yeah, just standing. Like I didn't sit. I think there was like maybe a period of 10 minutes where I like kneeled down for a little bit, but like I was standing like the entire time. So I think I reached the point where okay, everything hurts and then everything stopped hurting at some point. So that was good. It's like runner's high, but like standing high. I don't know.
Uh-huh. Yup. Yeah,
And then
it's
yeah, so at one point they started handing out the missal. Usually at these big like events in St. Peter's Square for special masses, they'll have like a booklet, which is the missal for whatever that thing is. And so we all eventually got missals, and it was a mix of English, Italian, Latin, and maybe a few other languages. And then at about 9:20 a.m., they started the International Rosary, which was cool. Um, they did I think Italian and Spanish, and then the other three languages were like languages you typically don't hear, especially in a Catholic setting. I think one was like Chinese, another one was like some sort of Middle Eastern language, and then I forget the last one. But so it was cool to like it really felt international, and you
mm,
really felt like the universality of the church with the crowd in the square, and the fact that we were praying the rosary in like these more uncommon languages. And then my favorite part of that of I guess the pre-mass warm up, we all sang the Salve Regina, like the common chant for that. And so that was really cool, and that was really beautiful to be able to do that with like everyone. And like I felt like there was a lot of participation with doing the Salve Regina
mm,
for that. So that was really nice.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, so the mass itself, um, I'm sure everybody has seen it or can go watch it. Was there any takeaways for the mass itself?
Yeah, so I had a few thoughts. Uh, I forget the cardinal's name, but whoever celebrated the mass, his homily was really good. I looked up the English translation later that day, but it was very like um, good at paying homage to Pope Francis and his pontificate, but also tied in the gospel, which I don't remember at this point. But I felt like he did a really good job of like honoring Pope Francis and then also tying in with the gospel reading that was selected for that mass. So that was really cool. Um, I think the one thing that really stood out to me from the liturgy itself, there was a point towards the end where they invited the Eastern Catholics to do their prayers and whatnot. So it was really, I don't have a lot of exposure to the more Eastern side of our faith, but it was just really cool to hear and see them do these. I don't know, these special prayers and chants in whatever language they were doing, um, done in a very Eastern way. So that was really cool to see and hear that. Um, and then the mass was 2 hours long. So in total, I think I was like standing for like 7 hours.
Mm.
And then I looked this up later too, but there were like a ton of dignitaries there. They all had their own section up behind the altar, and like President Trump was there, former President Biden, their wives, Zelensky, the president of Ukraine was there, Prince William was there, the kings and queens of many countries like Belgium and Spain and just all these other countries, and then a lot of delegates from all these various other countries. Like there were so many, like if you Google the list, it's quite extensive. And like the list is like, wow. And then the weird thought I had was like, did I really just go to mass with like all these people? But then also the thought is like, papal funerals are interesting because they really do like bring in everybody. Like it like unites the world in this like weird way.
Right.
And then um I guess unsurprisingly and surprisingly, like, I mean, because of Pope Francis's influence during his pontificate, like, I, it's not surprising, like, all these dignitaries showed up. So I don't know. I don't know how to like unpack that in a short amount of time, but I feel like there's a beauty there, and it just kind of speaks to like Pope Francis and his pontificate and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think it also, as you were kind of saying, it still shows the impact that the pontificate has in the power and authority that the church still has in the world. Now, again, I'm not trying to be naivete to say that the secular world and the powers that be still, are doing their own thing and aren't, they're not going to unfortunately listen to the wisdom of the church at all times. But when it comes to paying respects, they, leaders across the world. They don't do it for other major denominations. Now, granted, I know most don't have something as similar to
Scale, yeah.
yeah, to the scale. But that being said, again, difficult to articulate, but just do my best here of just trying to put into words how influential that the church still has in the world, and the voice that we can carry, and why we should be using that to evangelize, that Christ gave us that commission, gave us that commandment to go and baptize and to proclaim the gospel to every corner of the globe, and not for fame or glory, to, for that, but simply to bring all corners of the globe together to be unified under the banner of the cross, and to
Mhm.
have that be demonstrated there, or to kind of a glimpse of that, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. Beautifully said. Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
so mass is over. You finally are able to, I guess, where were you able to sit down for the first time after 7+ hours of standing?
I feel like I didn't even sit down until I got back to my hotel, but I ended up stuck in the square for like a little while because I think I
Still
read
got to get
maybe
everybody
there was
out. Yeah,
200,000, 300,000 people in the square.
right.
And so all these people also had to get out after the mass. So
Well,
so I was
sorry to cut you off, but I was like, and like you said, with all of with all those dignitaries, I mean, the heightened security. So they're not
Mhm.
gonna let. They got to get them out first before they'll even let you out. And then if you're in the middle, then you got to wait for everyone to clear out. Yeah,
Yeah.
it could
Yeah.
be it could take some time.
Yeah, and it did. And I just kind of waited around anyway. I didn't want to push. I did have to still kind of push through the the sea of people trying to exit. With that said, because I got stuck in the square, like I didn't get to catch the motorcade. uh, transporting Pope Francis to St. Mary Major. But they had set up all these big TV screens, like, just outside of the Vatican, like the Via Angelico had like a few screens. So when I got there, they were showing the motorcade, or basically, I believe he was transported in the Pope Mobile.
Hmm.
um, like across town to St. Mary Major, and it was really cool to as I was like slowly walking down the street and watching it on the screen. Just yeah, like it looked like like Rome, um, has lined the streets like along this route, and everyone's like waving and giving their last respects to Pope Francis before he's, and I guess, entombed at St. Mary Major. So that was cool to see. But yeah, but I wanted to beeline back to my hotel so I could like sit down and just like take care of myself physically, because like
Yeah.
it was a very enduring past, I don't know, 7+ hours in the square, or standing in line and then being
Yeah.
in the square. So
Wow. Okay. Uh, so that was Saturday,
Mhm.
and I want to say you had to leave. When did you leave? Was it Sunday?
Monday morning.
Monday morning. Okay, so you still had another full day. So, anything else on the pilgrimage, after the funeral that you wanted to share with anyone?
Yeah, and I can make this kind of quick because it wasn't a whole lot. But actually, when I found out, so when I earlier in the week, when I made the decision to um, still go to Rome, so, be part of whatever I can be a part of, like related to the funeral, related to Pope Francis lying in state. I also, because knowing that I didn't have the canonization to go to, I ended up booking a pasta making class, like a food tour, in Rome, and so I maybe imprudently booked that for after the funeral. Um, Not right after, thankfully. So, I think I booked it at like 5 or 6 p.m. that night, after the funeral, and the funeral ended at like noon. And then I think I got back to my hotel at like 1. So, um, I ate lunch in my hotel, probably like sat around and took a nap for a little while, and then got back up and walked towards that pasta making class. That was a lot of fun. Um, Basically we made from scratch. We made pasta dough and made fettuccine and ravioli, and gelato. Some of that stuff was like pre-made, but like we basically put it together, and then we, after all that was done and cooked, like we had dinner together of the stuff we made. So that was really cool. There were only 5 of us in the class plus the instructor. The funny thing was, like, two of the ladies of the group were also on my flight from DFW to Rome.
Huh.
And we all had the same story of how extremely turbulent it got, like on the landing. So
Mm,
I knew they were on my flight. Um, and then the other two were a British couple. The funny thing was, like, I was basically the only Catholic in the group, and the others were just there on holiday. Like, they're not holiday, but just there to be tourists and to do Italian things and experience Rome
right.
and whatnot. And so, as we were kind of getting to know each other, like during downtimes of the class and then at dinner time, it was interesting and cool to be able to share, like, oh, the original reason why I'm here in Rome was because of this canonization mass. And so they had questions about, like, what's a canonization mass? Who's Carlo Acutis and whatnot. So I was able to like nerdily share about that, but then also like share the experience of being at Pope Francis's funeral, because that was earlier in the day. And so a lot of I mean, most of the group were like, you're still functioning? Like, like, if you were standing around for like 7 hours, like, why are you here? So,
I
so
need some
it was just really
carbs,
cool.
man.
But yeah, it was just cool to share these stories about the funeral, about Pope Francis, about Carlo, the canonization, and Carlo Acutis. And yeah, because like I think the people were just, the others in the class were just like genuinely curious. So it was nice to like, kind of have that dinner together and kind of talk about that. And then, I mean, I got to learn like why those people were in Rome and, kind of
Sure.
exchange stories and whatnot. But so that was like a really cool experience.
Nice. Again, just like impromptu, and especially meeting people that you wouldn't normally meet, and being
Right.
able, like we said just a moment ago, being able to evangelize and to share that experience and the
Yep.
faith.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the next day, with it being Sunday, I just went to, so there was that church I went to like on Thursday morning, and then like probably like the same distance but a different direction. There's like another church in that neighborhood. So the first church was like dedicated to as the Blessed Mary, and then the other one was dedicated to Saint Joseph. So I went to this other church named after Saint Joseph. Um, and it's just a normal parish church, but like a little bit more ornate. So I walked in and I'm like, wow, this place is like really decorated and really there's a lot going on like with the with the inside of the church. But what was cool was like this felt like a really vibrant parish community. So I think I forget what time of mass I went, but like it was full. So mass was in Italian and whatnot, and they had confessions going on before and after, and then yeah, just everything was like kind of lively. So that was cool. Um, it was just nice to go to mass with the people of Rome, and not just like tourists.
Right.
Yeah. So that was pretty neat. And then after that, I decided to go check out St. Peter's. So part of my motivation for going to a mass in the neighborhood versus, well, I didn't want to go to the closing mass of the Jubilee of Teenagers because that would have required standing in more lines and then being in crowds of hundreds of thousands of people again. And it was hotter Sunday than it was Saturday. So I just didn't want to like subject myself to that for the second day in a
Absolutely.
row.
Yeah.
So walking back towards St. Peter's, yeah, the mass had just ended, so there was like just a ton of teenagers everywhere, all over the place, like surrounding the Vatican walls and whatnot. And so I was like, I don't want to fight this. So I like grabbed lunch finally at Jollibee. I walked back to Jollibee and like sat down for a while and enjoyed my fried chicken and steamed rice. And sat there for a while. And then once I finished up with lunch, then I was like, okay, now let me go into St. Peter's because they reopened it after the closing mass
Right.
for tourists again. So St. Peter's had basically been closed for like the past week because of,
Right.
stuff related to the funeral and for the viewing. So yeah, I go back inside. So um did the metal detectors again. It didn't take me that long to actually get back into the church, but once I was inside, checked out the Pieta, like the original one. And then Pope St. John Paul II is entombed in the altar of the chapel of Saint Sebastian next door to the Pieta. So I kneeled and prayed there at the tomb of Pope St. John Paul II. And then just kind of like zigzagged my way through, dodged tourists, took pictures, and then I went to the gift shop because some neighbors and friends and family had requested me to get some rosaries from them. So I went to the gift shop and did that. And then you had told me prior to my trip that during whenever there's no pope, like the chair is empty, right? And so the Vatican releases a special edition stamp like that commemorates the fact that
Right.
there's like
Yep.
the chair is empty. And you told me that my pastor at my parish like likes collecting that, and so I did make every attempt to like try to get these stamps. So I was like in the souvenir shop, like kind of trying to figure out if I can get them there, but turns out they didn't carry it. Um, but luckily, like the satellite Vatican post office kiosk thing they set up in St. Peter's Square was open. So I go inside there and I inquired about it, but turns out they were gonna release them like the next day when I was flying home.
Oh
So when
man.
I went to confession, after my confession was over with my pastor, I also said like, forgive me, Father, I didn't get your
Didn't
I
get the
didn't get your
Sedefacante.
yeah stamps. I was like, oh, that's cool. Don't worry about it. I have a priest friend that's at the Vatican now who's gonna pick some up for me. I was like, okay, great. Yeah, so I just basically went souvenir shopping uh for the various things that people asked me to get for them while I was there in Rome, like on Sunday, after going to Mass, after going to St. Peter's Square. And then after that, I just checked out of my hotel and then went on to the airport hotel down near the airport because I was flying out like the next morning. So I didn't want to like try to get down to the airport during Monday traffic. So
Yeah, I don't blame you there. Um, yeah, and when you brought up the souvenirs and purchasing, that's another thing that it popped in my mind when you said that was uh if you ever, anyone that's watching this, if you ever go to Rome in the Vatican area, don't be afraid to go shopping, meaning don't be afraid to go and look into all the different stores. There's a ton of stores, a ton of religious stores, and they all price them differently, right?
they really
So
do.
you could go and you see the exact same item, the exact same rosary or icon or image, and one will be €3 cheaper, right? And
Yeah,
so, don't be afraid. Don't have the FOMO of, well, I have to get it at this place because I can almost guarantee you will find it somewhere else
right.
in Rome, depending on what it is, of course.
Yeah,
And, so sometimes it's good, one tip that a friend of mine told me when he said, if you're going to be there for more than a day or for a couple of days, you may want to just kind of peruse first, like for one day, just kind of look around and keep a mental note or write it down. So that way, when you go back, go back on the last day to do your shopping on the last day. So that way you don't have to worry about all of the
right.
stuff, uh, before you leave. So
That's
yeah,
a good tip.
yeah.
That's a good tip for sure. I think I was like kind of living that out without having heard
Yeah.
that.
I mean, and it just made sense. I was like, oh yeah, that is really smart to do everything at the end of that. And and it also, especially on a pilgrimage too, it keeps your mental frame of mind in the right place uh
Right,
before the ending where you're like, okay, I'm gonna do all the things that, people ask me to do if I can. So
right.
um okay, well, a- as we're wrapping up here, any other thoughts, insights, tips, anything that you would like to share with
Yeah.
the
I know
viewers?
a lot of people have asked me, like, are you going to go? So I don't think the Vatican has announced like the rescheduled canonization
At
of
least not
Carlo
as the time
because,
of when we were recording this. They haven't.
right, right.
Yeah.
And I think a large part of it was I think they were going to wait until the new Pope was elected. So now that we have Pope Leo, praise God, um, I'm sure, he has a lot to catch up on. So,
Yeah. Last I saw was he scheduled uh, eight blesseds, but purposely left out Carlo. And I think it's smart because he knows. I mean, that's going to be a heavily attended canonization. Number
oh, yeah.
one.
Hmm.
And then his Blessed Carlo's mother is still alive. And
Yeah.
so I'm sure, the Vatican and them are trying to communicate with her and their
He's
family.
like
And
on tour, like
yeah,
around the world right now.
yeah.
So,
So, they're trying to figure that out. I I heard rumors and whispers that they're maybe aiming for September and around the September time frame.
that'd be a good time.
Again, that's just a pure rumor, so I have
Yeah.
nothing to back that claim. They could be like, "Oh, it's happening in August." I don't know, but um,
Well,
so
Pier
so yeah,
Giorgio is in August, so
and that's kind of what they were. That's why they were hinting at possibly maybe getting them close to having both of those together would be a good matchup right there. But yeah, we'll see.
yeah.
It'll be exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see. I do have a lot of work trips in the fall, so or in late summer and the fall, so we'll see. I mean, I won't be upset that I don't get to go if because of work obligations, but I just figured, either way, like if I were to make a Carlo Acutis specific like pilgrimage again, like I want to go see him in a CC. That would be like my ultimate goal, really. So
Yeah.
whether he's canonized yet or not. So, but yeah, as far as other tips and whatnot, so I know like I do have that pilgrimage blog, but I
What is that
my
pilgrimage blog, by the way?
yeah, it's
Shameless plug.
pilgrimforless.com. Shameless plugs.
That's right. And if they want to follow
But
you on an Instagram,
yeah,
where the
and if
best
they want
handle?
to, if you want to follow me, so I haven't updated Pilgrim for Less in a long while, but but I did start a new blog and a new Instagram that's just more like travel related. So when it comes to like the logistics of like air travel and hotel stays. Like I have a blog for that. And that's where is Randell, RANDELL.com. And then that's also my Instagram handle. So go to the blog for like flight reviews. I know we were kind of talking about like the flight over to Rome, like at the beginning of this video. Like, but if you want like details of like how was the flight, like what, like just everything about the flight, how was the seat, like how, like everything about it, like that's already posted on my blog. So, and then the hotels I've stayed at, like those are on the blog. So,
Nice.
um, and then the Instagram, that's where I did like live on the street type reels during this pilgrimage for Pope Francis's funeral. So again, where is Randall is that handle. So check me out. Give a follow if
Fantastic.
you want to keep up with me.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you, Randall. I know I've taken a lot of your time. Thank you so much for sharing. I know this won't be the last by any means. God willing,
Yeah.
we'll be able to hit the road again and go on pilgrimage together. But no, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity, Jason.
Anytime. So thank y'all for watching. If you're still watching this long, praise God. Remember to to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Until the next time, we'll see you later. God bless.
God bless.